And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Excel 2016, Mastering Your Data. I'm going to hand things over to our featured presenter today. He is a New Horizons instructor. His name is Mike Martin. Mike, you now have the floor.
Hey, thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. This is Mike, and I will be the facilitator for today's Master Your Data with Microsoft Excel 2016. And again, it's going to be a small taste of what we do in the classroom every single day. So it's going to be more like a show and tell, but I'm going to give you a lot of great information. And if you want to take notes or just kind of memorize what we're saying, and also remember, you do have a recording, so that would be awesome to kind of review the information I'm going through. So here's what I'm going to go through. I'm going to explain how to use data, subtotals, and grouping tools. How to manage tables. And once I get a table, how to insert a pivot table. And a pivot table is used to query data. So when you have lots of data, you got to query it and customize that table. Use that table to analyze your data. I'll show you how to make some custom calculations. And I think I'm going to have plenty of time. I'm going to throw in a pivot chart too. I mean, those are just plain fun. And also I want to step back when I say query your data. Just remember the word query is Latin for question. So you just ask your data questions and you build a pivot table to answer the question. And then I think I'll start off with this easy one, and that's show formulas. Just a couple of minor housekeeping guidelines. Hey, it's only an hour, and I'm going to go through the materials at a good pace. But it is only an hour, and I got a lot of materials. So I'm going to ask if you try really hard to keep your distractions down. Push that cell phone out of the way. Those emails will be there for you right after class, I guarantee it. My job is to keep your engagement up. So I'm going to work really hard to keep your engagement up. As mentioned, if you do have any comments or questions, we will be saving some time at the end of the course for a Q&A. And I'll do my best to answer the questions that you have about the topics I go over today. Real quick, I'd like to let you know who I am. My name is Mike. I am a certified applications trainer. So I've got my little badges down in the lower right-hand corner there, certified in Excel and as a Microsoft trainer. I've been doing this a long time. You know, that 20 years right there, we'll just leave that number alone. I don't have to keep updating that, okay? My specialty is Microsoft applications and essential skills like customer service and communications. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. That's the city next to Minneapolis, you know, the Twin Cities. I'm from St. Paul, and I am married with 3 daughters. So that's who I am. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and end my slideshow, and I will share my spreadsheet, just a typical spreadsheet with you. So let me get that window up. I just have it on my other monitor. And it's much easier than I'm making it. Boom, there we go. Typical Excel spreadsheet, okay? And look at the words I'm using. Spreadsheet, workbook. That's nothing new. My grandfather had a workbook and spreadsheets. And he'd carry it around. He worked for General Mills. He was an accountant. He had to open it up and spread this paper out, hence spreadsheet. So this is nothing new, but I want to point out those terms because that's what Microsoft Excel is. Formulas, calculations, finding, you know, our goals, our percent of increases. But through the years, because of data explosion, we're starting to use it more as a data source, as a database. So that's what I want to concentrate on, is some database tools to make it easier for you to understand data management. So first of all, I did say, oh my goodness, you know, it's a spreadsheet with formulas and all that. So when you are in a spreadsheet, there's only two things you can put in a cell, a label or a formula, right? So if I typed in 55113-2726, that's a label. That's a zip code for St. Paul, Minnesota. So I'll zoom in on it. And then if you put an equal sign in front of it, that's a formula. So those are two different things and pretty basic, but that's all you can put in to a spreadsheet is a label or a formula. So when you're working with spreadsheets, it's to your best interest to know where your formulas and labels are. And I don't have all day to use the poke around method, right? Poking around, I think there's one over here. Instead, take your left hand, make a C out of your thumb and forefinger, and use the control tilde or tilde, depends on where you're from. And now you're saying the what? It's right below the escape key on any standard PC keyboard, PCs now. So it's the tilde right below the escape key. It also has the single quote on it. If I go control tilde, now it switches my data sheet view to my formula sheet view. And this is how I can see all my formulas. So, okay, these are labels, these are formulas, and this is a fantastic tool for a couple of reasons. A, when I get spreadsheets from somebody else, I know exactly how it was made. And if I don't understand a formula in here, because people always say to me, why do I need training? I can just Google it. And then the obvious comeback is, well, how do you know what to Google? You know, have you ever thought of Googling a scenario manager? And if you look at the formulas, this will give you an idea of what to Google to figure out how the spreadsheet was made. And also, if you have an issue with it and you want to audit your worksheet, any formula you click on, the corresponding numbers that it's pulling from is highlighted, is lit up. So you can go to any spreadsheet and go control tilde, and then it switches it from data sheet view to formula sheet view. And to get back is the same keystroke, control tilde. So that might be a keystroke you want to hang on to. Control plus your tilde. Well, now let's talk about data. Because as we know, we have data explosion happening all around us. We're getting all sorts of data, and we've got to condense that data to make sure that we can understand it better. So I do have a worksheet in here called invoices, and we're tracking our invoices in 2018, 2019, and I'm going to select A2, and here's another keystroke if you want to write it down. I want to select all my data in that column, which is Control Shift down arrow. So hold your Control, your Shift, and then hit the down arrow, and that selects all of your data in the particular column. That is a whole lot faster than doing the drag select method, especially if somebody wants to go to lunch. Come on, Mike, hurry up. Hang on, I'm at 200. I got to go to about 2,156. Okay, so you don't do that. Control Shift down arrow. And I know I have 2,155, as including the header, because look at your status bar. Way down on the bottom, that bar is constantly telling me information. Mike, you selected 2,155 rows of data. Okay, so that's a good keystroke. But another thing is always watch your status bar. Again, that's the gray bar way on the bottom. Because if I select a bunch of numbers, look at what it's telling me. Let me get that pop-up out of the way. Come on. There, I just closed it. There we go. So if you select a bunch of numbers, it tells you exactly how many you got selected, what is the average, what is the smallest, what is the biggest, what is it if you added it all up. Keep your eyes on the status bar. All right, I have no clue where I'm at now. So I want to go home. I want to go home. Control home brings you to the beginning of any data set. Control and the home key. If you want to go to the end of your data set, END, end, control end, goes to the end of your data set. So now I clearly know I have data from A1 through K, 2,156. By just going control home, control end. So a couple of keystrokes there for you that will make your work quicker, faster, and more efficient. And that's what training's all about in the first place, right? Now, pretend we're sales managers. And I've got companies that we sell to all over the world. So I've got this data we're tracking. We sell products all over the world. So we know the companies we're selling to. I know the countries I'm selling in. I know the reps. And then I got column headers that tell me everything. Order ID, when they were ordered, when it was required, when it was shipped, what products were shipped, how much money we charge them per unit, how many we sold them, and then a formula figuring out extended price. As a sales manager, these columns right here are kind of in the way. Good information, awesome information, right? But I just want to look at the company, the country, the sales rep, and what they're selling. D through H is in my way. Now, I know almost 90% of you would say right-click and hide. But I've been on a personal mission for about 18 years. I'm not kidding. About 18 years. That say, hey, we got to stop hiding columns. Because that causes problems down the road. Plus the word is hide. It's not get rid of the columns out of convenience. To get rid of the columns out of convenience is do it this way. At least consider it, okay? Go to your data tab, since we're managing data. And then way over on the right, in the outline group, group them. So you group columns. So when I click on group, all right, look what happens here. A pane appears, P-A-N-E, and with a expand collapse button. So now I collapsed it. It does the exact same thing that I want happen when I hide columns, but it's going to be quicker and faster, more efficient. I don't have to hide, unhide, hide, unhide. And most importantly, I know people hide columns and then they move on. We all move on. They get promoted. They switch jobs. I've never, ever, ever heard a colleague on the last day go, hey, everybody, great working for you. You know that sales summary spreadsheet? I hit a column on the invoice sheet. See you later. No one's ever done that. And if you don't know it's hidden, then you're building vertical lookups and stuff. You're going to have issues. With it hidden, I got problems. With it grouped, now when I email these to my colleagues, the only question I'll ever receive is, how'd you do that? So spread the word. Help me. Also, if you have a spreadsheet that's a 1/4 mile long, you can select columns within a group and group them. So you can have groups within a group where you're really super organized people. And then I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you how to take the groups off. You just select all the columns that are grouped. And then in the outline group, way over on the right of your data ribbon, there's a tool to ungroup. So then I just ungroup. And grouping is the way to go when you're managing large spreadsheets full of data. Another tool that will help you is subtotaling. And I can get a subtotal off of any piece of criteria. So the hardest part of subtotaling is deciding what piece of criteria you want to subtotal on. And after some thought here, I want to subtotal on sales rep. So I want to see how my reps are doing. So the first step is to sort your data by that criteria. And man, I see people making sorting really difficult. Bottom line, when you're working with data, just be in your data, okay? That's really simple, meaning don't be out here. So if I want to sort a sales rep, I just click on one rep in your data ribbon in the sort and filter group, just sort A to Z. Yes, all the other data comes with, because if it didn't, we would have been in trouble since 1987. Okay, of course all the other data comes with. So if you sort the product name, everything else comes with. So just click the piece of data, sort, because I see people select columns and sort, and look what happens. A, I hear a sound, and B, this is a sort warning, a warning. So you don't want that. All right, now that I sorted correctly, on my data tab, way to the right, subtotal, subtotaling. And then what I can do in subtotaling is say, okay, I want to total the extended price. Now look at that, that already was checked. But I'm getting too excited about the subtotaling. I'm going to slow down here a little bit and start at the top. Hey, subtotal at the change in, let's see, we said salesperson. Yeah. So I'm going to subtotal and then change the salesperson. Now, what function do you want to do? These are also referred to as measures. Well, I can add up, I can count, I can get averages. I just want to sum. So I'm going to sum. What do you want to sum, Mike? Well, they figured out extended price because of the formula. Sell is smart. But I can also say I want to know how many we sold. So I'm going to check quantity too. Then I say okay. And now a pane appears over on the left. And when I scroll down, at the break of each sales rep, because we sorted by sales rep, Excel inserts a line. And now I know exactly what Andrew sold. He sold 6,000 pieces for $177,000. But it gets better, because look at the pane. On the top, on the left there, 1, 2, 3, I got 3 levels of this outline. 1, for our entire company, the grand total was 51 units, 51,000 units at 1.3 mil. Level 2, this is how each sales rep did. So I know exactly what Ann did, exactly what Laura did. If I want to peek at Laura's, I can expand and collapse Laura's details. And then level 3 is the whole shebang. So grouping, subtotaling, awesome tools. To take subtotaling off, because you got to take it off once in a while. We're going to be hanging out on our data ribbon almost the entire time. So get way over to the right again, click on subtotal. Then way in the left-hand corner is remove all. Now I got clean ranges of data again. Now notice the word I just used, ranges of data. Because when I go like this, that's a range of data. That's all it is. And that's what most people I experience when I come in contact with. Most people only work in ranges of data. But now you and I, bottom line here, If it's truly data, you always put data into tables. I'll say it again. If you are truly working with data, you put data into tables like Access, SQL, Tableau. Tableau even has the word table in it. So this is not a table, this is a spreadsheet with a range of data. So a lot of people, when they go to make a pivot table, a table that pivots, you insert a pivot table. See, for years, the first question was, do you want to base it on a table or a range? And people just do the range. And the range is from A1 through K 2156. I know that because I went home and end. But those dollar symbols mean it's absolute. It's locked in. Your data range will not change. So if you've got new data, you better change the range or it's not going to pick it up. And that could be a problem. So you base pivot tables on the first choice here, tables. So Mike, what the heck's a table then? And it's super easy. Be in your data. That's a basic rule, right? Be in your data. Then I go to insert, and right below the insert key is a table. I click on it. It finds my range because I got clean data. It also says, does your table have headers? And they're like, yes, it does. So I say, okay, that's a table. That is a table. Way over here on the right is a spreadsheet. Two different things now. Spreadsheet, table. And when I'm on my table, I've got table tools on my ribbon. And oh my goodness, everything I need to manage my table, everything I need to manage my data is automatically turned on. Everything. The formatting, dark light, dark light, darker light, banded rows. I can see my data super good at 4:30 on a Friday. Even simple things like when I scroll down, I don't have to worry about freezing the pane because it's automatically frozen. So I don't have to freeze panes. The filters are automatically turned on and the sorting is more intuitive. Small to large for numbers. Old to new for dates. A to Z for text. It just keeps getting better, folks. It really does. In the center of my table design ribbon, I can add a total row. A total row. So it pops down to the bottom, puts a row in, and every single cell has the drop down for my measures. So now I don't even have to create formulas. I can count how many products we sold. I can find the average price. And then no stay. So if you filter your data and sort your data, you're getting the right answers. And you can turn that on and off at any time. So the total row. So everything you need to manage your data is turned on automatically, and data belongs into tables. Hence, this is a table, but this is the most important part of the table. And before I get there, I'm going to name my table just so I don't forget. So my table ribbon, way over on the left, you can name it because the name currently is table 4. And after a long weekend, that won't make any sense to me. So this is a shipping info. So you can name tables, you can name ranges, you can name cells, you can name things in Excel in order to kind of work easier with it. No spaces in names, by the way, so I just named it. And now here's the most important part of the table. I'm going to go down to the end. I turn my total row off. I'm going to zoom in because now this is important, everybody. Tables are dynamic, which means when I add more data, either by typing or by appending or by importing, see what's happening here? As I add more data, the table grows or shrinks. If I delete data, it grows or shrinks. So you build pivot tables off of tables, and no matter what happens, your pivot table is going to get the right data. So it's dynamic. Let me go back down to the bottom there. I just want to make sure, because I will be making a pivot table. So I just want to make sure my data has integrity. What the heck, I'll just delete these rows out just to make sure. But if you think that's cool, check this out. Over on the right, I can make a formula to find my percent of increase. So let's say we're going to increase our prices by 2%. Okay, I hit enter. Oh, the table grows that way too. I'm going to put in a formula and use my fill handle. And I know I got to explain a fill handle because I've been doing this a long time, and people will say, well, a fill handle drags the information down, drags the formula down, copies the formula down, all sorts of stuff. Which actually what a fill handle does is a fill handle fills in what logically comes next, because math is so logical, right? So what's logically comes next. So for example, if you type in Monday, you use your fill handle to get to Sunday. You don't have to type that in. Or if you're building a spreadsheet and you got year one, we all know logically what comes next, right? So why are we typing? And last one, Q1, do not in the Q&A ask me where Q5 is, because that is not logical. Okay, so a fill handle fills in what logically comes next. And the reason why I said this is, I'll explain it right now. So if I make a simple formula that says take the unit price and multiply it by 1.02, and I enter it in, what happens is, since it's a table, I entered it in, and it did not just stay like right there, and I had to use my fill handle, which means I had to do 2,156 calculations, because it would, spreadsheets do calculations by row. So I'd have to do 2,156 calculations. But since I am using a table, it does one calculation, just one. And those are what's called DAX formulas, expressions to analyze data, because look at that formula in my formula bar. It's taking the column and multiplying it by 1.02. So tables are the way to go. So now that I have a table, people ask questions from the data. That's what tables are for. Hey, what 3 products did Ann Dunsworth sell but never shipped? That's a question. So what 3 products did Ann Dunsworth sell but didn't ship? Well, I could sort, I could filter, I could figure out the answer. Another question. What did Laura and Michael ship on March 17th? Give me about 7 minutes. I'll figure it out for you. So if your supervisor is asking a question about your data, or if you are, build a pivot table to answer it. And it's simple as that. A pivot table answers questions. So you got to identify the question, put the most pertinent information in rows, secondary information in columns, and whatever you want to aggregate into values. You know, math, sum, average, all that. So let's just pretend I figured out the question, because I've heard it like 3 times now. So I said, okay, I'm going to build a pivot table to answer the question. So be in your table, be in your data. Then I go to insert pivot table. And now look at this dialog box. It's not basing it on a range. It's basing it on my shipping table. So I'll always have the data I need. Put in a new worksheet. Boom. To the left is the table. To the right are the fields that answer the question. And then I lay it out in a structure. So let's see. In order to answer this question, I do need to know, I'll just start from the top, and this is how I do it. I do need to know the company. I got to know the sales rep. I do need to know the product. Ship date. Did I pass that? There we go, ship date. And then I'm going to go out on my own here. And I'm going to just say, my boss will probably want to know how much money we brought in. So I just click on the fields, then answer the questions. Then I go into my quadrants. And I'm like, well, I got filters, I got columns, rows, and values. And you can just drag and drop them. Let's see, what would companies look like in columns? Kind of crazy. What would product names look like in columns? So see, I'm dragging and dropping. Yeah, it's even more crazy. Wait a minute, I can filter. And my boss usually wants to know what a salesperson does, so I might filter by sales rep. So now I got a filter way up there in A1. And you can have multiple filters, so why don't I go, what does a sales rep ship on a given day? So see, you just start logically laying it out, thinking about the structure, most pertinent information in rows, secondary in columns. So let's see, we should know the company. I better put that down in rows. And then the product. And then I can group. So it's grouping. First it will show me the company, and then it will show me the product. So now I know from this company here, and they're foreign companies. That's why it's in German. And these are all the products. Here's the company. These are all the products. But now, oh, and then the extended price too, the money. But I got filters. So I don't want to look at all the reps. So you only have to do this once. Select multiple items. I just want to see what Ann Dunsworth is selling. So now there's everything Ann Dunsworth is selling. But remember, my supervisor wanted to know the products that didn't ship. So here's my ship dates. Again, I don't want to look at all of them. So I select multiple items, deselect all. Well, if the cell is left blank, it didn't ship. Right there's the 3 products that did not ship for Ann Dunsworth. My other question was, what did Michael, Margaret, and Laura, see right here, Michael, Margaret, and Laura, what did they ship on March 17th? So I could search, by the way. See, there's a little search box right up there. So I can search for my data. And there's March 17th. Nothing. Oh my goodness, I knew it. So this is what real sales managers do, right? Okay, now these 3 characters did not ship anything on March 17th. That means that more than likely they were at the St. Patrick's Day parade in St. Paul, Minnesota, or Chicago, or New York, or Boston. They were at the St. Patrick's Day parade. Now, those are questions. And remember, if you don't use a pivot table, you'd be using a big sheet of data to figure out what those three characters shipped on March 17th. So pivot tables are so much easier. And I am filtering by salesperson. So I'll put all my salespeople back. And by ship dates. But hang on to your seats for this one now. So filtering is a way to slice and dice your data. Slice and dice your data. So a really super cool filter is called a slicer. So when you're on your pivot table, you've got pivot table analysis tools. And then within this ribbon is slicers. Now hang on, everybody. This is great. So wait a minute. What am I filtering by? I'm trying to pretend I'm, working for real here. Let's see, salesperson, because I'm just looking at the filters, right? And ship date. Say okay. Now look at this. I got two little interactive tools that I can format exactly how I want. I can change the colors, change the font. I can make it look really nice. But now when my boss comes and says, hey, Mike, what did Nancy ship on September 11th? Boom, right there. What else you need? How about Laura on January 10th? Right there. One more question and I'll move on. What did Janet, hold my control key down, what did Janet and Nancy ship on October 10th? Now it's interactive. It's powerful. That's the way we manage our data. Now I think everything is set. But then my boss walks up and says, Mike, hey, I'm working and on this project because we're going to open up markets in Europe. So I got to know which sales rep has the most sales per country. I'm like, well, that's a different question, right? What reps have the most sales in other countries? And she's going to present it to the stakeholders. So if you got a different question, you can build two pivot tables. You don't have to have one that gets super complicated. Make two. What the heck? So I'm going to get back to my invoice sheet because this holds all the answers, right? The data. I identified the question. She did say she was going to present it to the stakeholders. So I'm making a chart. So let's go insert. And in my chart group, all these beautiful charts, there's a pivot chart. So now I'll click on and say, let's make a chart that pivots. Same process. Select your data. It's in a table. Where do you want to put it? New worksheet. But this time I get a table way over on the left for free and a chart. But on the chart, same process, four quadrants, but I have legends and axes. So axes are like rows, legends are like columns. Identify the question, so I got to have country, salesperson, and how much did they sell per country. So I'm going to put extended price. And I got this huge graph here that is showing me the answers that I need. But no one in the room will be able to, digest this. So I'm adding a filter. And I can look at one country at a time. So instead of having country in the axes, I should only have one axis, by the way. So let's drag the country into filters. And now I can clearly see that Margaret has the most sales out of everybody. But I know some people in the room won't pick that up right away. So over on my data in the table, I just click on a piece of data because it's always that simple now. If you're working with a piece of data, just click on your data. Right click, trace down to sort, large to small. Who has the most sales? Margaret. Who has the least? Stephen. And now I did notice that the money, both on this one, this pivot table, and on my previous one, is not formatted. So no big deal. You just go to the values section of your quadrants. Each field has a little down arrow. Most of these commands you can just bypass because it's about moving the field around. You can just drag and drop them. So the only one I ever focus on is value field settings. And now this is where you can change the different type of calculation. Instead of adding up the money, you can count or average or sum or max. Standard deviation. So see, you can customize your calculation. And in the bottom left, you can also format the money into currency. So this is where you make customized calculations. Just use a little drop down arrow in your values. I formatted it. Also in our classes, we go all over how to, format this chart so it looks just beautiful. But this is just a power hour. And then one last thing. Well, maybe two things. Now I can use my filters and I can clearly see, hey, the filters in A1. Who has the most sales in Belgium? Margaret. Who has the most sales in Denmark? Margaret. But now if I have multiple items, like who has the most sales in Belgium and Denmark? Well, now I'm not really sure because I'm looking at two. So what I can do is I can use fields more than once. So again, in customized calculations, you can use a field multiple times. But I'm going to drag the country into the legend. And now I can clearly see, well, Margaret has the most sales in Denmark and actually Belgium too. And now one last thing. I'm filtering by country. So that's a slicer. So I add a slicer. I say country. I would format this maybe a little different color. And now when my supervisor goes to a meeting and they say, well, who's selling in Canada? Well, Janet is. Who's selling in Germany? Well, obviously Andrew. Well, who's selling in Germany and Italy? Well, Andrew in Germany and Andrew in Italy. So now it's interactive. And to make it a dashboard, oh my gosh, to make it a dashboard, you just go to view in the show group, turn off the grid lines. Ooh, it's white now, easy to see. Turn off the headings. Why do we need that? Turn off the formula bar. Double click a ribbon so it minimizes. And now that's a dashboard. It's pulling all the data from here. There you go. So I know I went through a lot of information in a rather quick period. But the main thing about education or learning or training is not, hey, how do I do all those steps, step by step by step? Because you know what? That's not what it's about. What it's about is being aware of what these tools can do. being aware there's pivot tables, being aware there's even a table. And now you are, and with practice and just knowledge, you get in there and start doing it. So that's a little sample of what we do in our training. And like any good speaker would, you always tell the audience what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. So remember, I accidentally had to shut down my PowerPoint because it was in my way. So usually my endings are much smoother. Okay, let me get it back open for you, and there it is. I did get it open, and much smoother ending in the future. Okay. So when you came in, I said, hey, I'm going to explain how to use data subtotals and grouping, how to insert a pivot table, how to customize that pivot table, groupings, formatting, how to analyze data. Now, I showed you that for sure. I explained how to customize the calculations with the value settings. I threw in a chart just for fun. And then I started all off by showing formulas. So I truly, truly, truly hope that this was beneficial for you. And at this point, I'll kind of turn it over. And if we got a little time for a Q&A.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'll give everyone an opportunity to just type in some questions that they may have. Just a couple reminders here. If you're interested in any of the material that was presented in this webinar, or if you have any questions just regarding what's available to you, please contact your local center for more information. You can log on to newhorizons.com and do a quick zip code search for the state center that's nearest you. Also, our webinar schedule is up to date on our website as well. Just click on the webinars link when you go to our website to view the full schedule and register for any upcoming sessions. Mike has a couple more that's sprinkled out there in the upcoming months. So if you like what he presented here with Excel, he has a lot more fun sessions coming up. And a friendly reminder that I will be sending out the archive recording of today's session, so you can review, pass along to any colleagues who may have missed it. So we have quite a few questions that had come in, Mike, during your demo here. The first one is, can you subtotal something that has a slicer on it? Wasn't sure if you went over that, but that was one of our questions that came in.
Yeah, now the slicer kind of takes place of the subtotal. So what I can do is, instead of, let me kind of zoom in here. Actually, when you put your data into a table, I don't really need subtotaling, because the subtotal will kind of give you the information you need on a particular part of data. So if you add a slicer, let me go get a slicer back in here, then there's really no need for subtotaling, because when I kind of filter down to the data that I actually need, I gotta just regroup here and get that slicers back in, it will give me the answer that I need just from the filtering. So there's really no need for subtotaling when you do this. So if I go ahead and say, hey, here's Andrew in Belgium, see, there's Andrew in Belgium, or just Andrew. So it kind of takes the need for that subtotaling away by using the filters. So you do one or the other.
Great.
And I hope it's helpful.
Great. The next question is, when should data, like the example that you are showing, be best maintained in a database versus a spreadsheet? The person says, seems like very important data that's so secure, role-based, that role-based access would be a concern. He said, unless the spreadsheet is read-only and pulls data from another source. So I guess the main question is, when would using a database versus a spreadsheet be more applicable in terms of the data that you are working with?
Hey, I love that question. Totally love it, because I started off saying, you know what? Excel really isn't a database, but they are building tools, more and more tools, so it acts like a database. So you got to guard your data. So I really like that question. I really guard it. So a couple things come to mind. Once I build my dashboards, my pivot tables, pivot charts, I always right click the invoice sheet, because that's my data, and then I hide it so that people don't inadvertently taint my data, right? Sometimes it's just by accident. But it also, that's the quick fix. But it also leads us to the next thing Excel has. And there's so much in Excel, because Excel has a powerful database built in that most people aren't aware of. You got to go to your options, add-ins, and turn on Power Pivot. Power Pivot. So now I would take my invoice sheet, add it to a data model. So now it's going into a very powerful data model where I can make relational databases. I can have up to 1 billion rows of data. I can extract it. I can transform it. I can get data from all sorts of other sources, including Oracle and SAS, websites, PDFs, mash it all together, manage your data in the background, and then just build pivot tables in the foreground. So Excel has a powerful tool called Power Pivot. That's where it would go. And that's it.
Wonderful. Another question that came up in regards to basically subtotaling and totaling of the columns. The person asked, is it better to put in the subtotals before or after creating the table?
Good question. I would put it in, actually, here's the deal. When you have a subtotal on, you cannot make a table. So subtotaling are for ranges of data. So that's a different tool. When you just use your range of data, that's when I subtotal. But if you convert it to a table, again, there's really no reason for subtotaling, because you just use your filters or slicers. So in order to convert it to a table, Excel will say, please take all subtotaling off before you can make a table.
Great. Another question is, how do I add a new row and use a formula for calculations for certain subsets of that row without altering other subsets?
Huh. Boy, that question I'm trying to get my head wrapped around. So subsets, you can insert a row, and then, yeah, you can make a formula here that would be different than, like, I'll just make one here. So it depends on what you're doing. I'd have to actually see what you're doing, but I could make a formula there for this subset, insert a row here, just by right-clicking inserting, and do a completely different formula here. But I'd have to actually see. I'm a real visual learner, so I'd have to actually see exactly what they mean by that. And I got to concentrate on making my actual formula instead of looking around, talking. So yeah, I can make formulas off of subsets, which I just did, but I'm not fully confident if this is what the questionnaire meant or not. So those are subsets with two different formulas.
All right. Another question that came in, excuse me here. Can a pivot chart function be used for burn down charts?
The pivot table function are only specific charts you can use them for. So not all charts work with the pivot chart. So drill down, no, you can't use them for drill downs. Filtering is kind of like a drill down, but burn down or drill down, if you have, like say, a year full of data, you can break it down to clicking on say a bar chart or the pie chart, break it down to quarters, break it down to months, break it down to weeks. That is not something we can do in a basic pivot chart. But then again, that's going to lead you into what's called Power Pivot or Power BI, both Microsoft products that we train on. In fact, I'm training on it next week. Power BI, yes, we can make burn down charts there much easier, but those are more robust tools to handle data more than Excel.
Awesome. I know we're heading at the top of the hour, so I have a couple more questions I'll squeeze in before then. The next one is, can you use a pivot table to reconcile a received bill versus the amount that you are deducting for an employee's pay? And then they added on, even if you do not have an exact match between the two files.
Again, that's a real specific question, but the basic part of the pivot table is you got a question of the data, build a table to answer it. So really identify the question and then build a pivot table to answer it. Now, when she was, or he or she mentioned about a mismatch of data, first thing when I heard that, I'm thinking of vertical lookup. That function would find payroll discrepancies, and even though they're not exact matches, it will still find close matches. So when I heard that thrown in there, I'm like, that sounds more like a vertical lookup tool, because remember, we've got so many tools in our toolbox. We got to use the right tool for the right job. So just for a 3-second question without seeing anything, I'd kind of steer more towards a vertical lookup than a pivot table.
Great. And one last question before we hit the road here. When making a pivot table, is it possible to concatenate multiple variables together?
Yes. As long as you've got the variables, you can use the ampersand, which glues or concatenates, or the concatenate function. And I love that question because I just love concatenation, because that's a true data geek. But when you get results, yeah, you can build a formula to say, okay, I got my results, let's put in a string of text. So the answer is yes.
Great. We are at the top of the hour, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Mike, for speaking on behalf of New Horizons and facilitating such a great and very informative session on Excel and data processing. As a reminder, a recording of the session will be sent out later today for you to review. I know it was a lot of information and a great demo by Mike here. Thank you again. You may now all log off. Everyone, thank you again for joining us.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
See ya. See ya.